The council chamber stretched so far that the ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds. Ambassador David Miller stood at the center of a massive circular platform, suspended 300 meters above the floor. Around him, rising in concentric rings that seemed to touch the sky, sat representatives from over 400 alien civilizations. Each species occupied ornate viewing boxes decorated with symbols of their home worlds. The chamber hummed with hundreds of different languages, all translated instantly through neural implants that made David's skull ache with the constant noise. He was alone. No guards, no other humans. Just one man representing Earth before the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. The platform beneath his feet was transparent, letting him see the dizzying drop below. It was designed to intimidate, to make whoever stood here feel small and insignificant. David forced himself to stand tall, his hands relaxed at his sides, his face calm. He had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. 6 months studying galactic law, alien psychology, and the delicate balance of power that kept 400 species from tearing each other apart. A deep sound echoed through the chamber, like a bell made of thunder. The conversation stopped instantly. Every alien I turned toward the highest platform, where Supreme Counselor Drax sat on a throne carved from a single piece of meteorite iron. Drax belonged to the Tolvan species. Beings who looked like living stone, with skin that glittered with embedded crystals. He was old, perhaps 3,000 years old, and his voice carried the weight of centuries. "Human," Drax said, and the translation made David's teeth vibrate. "You stand accused of the most serious violation of galactic law. Your species has been contacted 17 times by official council representatives. 17 times, you have refused to acknowledge our authority. 17 times, you have continued to expand into territory that does not belong to you." David waited. He had learned that interrupting a Supreme Counselor was considered an insult worthy of immediate expulsion from the chamber, possibly from existence. 3 cycles ago, Drax continued, your ships entered the forbidden zone around the star you call Proxima Centauri. That zone has been sealed by council law for 8,000 years. You were warned. You ignored the warning. Your ships are still there. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. David caught words in various languages. Arrogant, primitive, dangerous. "We have brought you here to answer for these crimes," Drax said. "The council has already reached its preliminary judgment. Earth will be isolated. Your system will be surrounded by a containment field. No human will leave. No ship will enter. Your species will remain on your world until you learn to respect the laws that govern civilized space." David finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but the chamber's acoustics carried it perfectly to every listener. No, the silence that followed was absolute. 400 species, thousands of individual beings, all frozen in shock. No one said no to the Supreme Counselor. Not if they wanted to survive the next hour. Drax leaned forward, his crystal-studded face reflecting light in sharp angles. "You refuse the Council's judgment." "I refuse the premise of your judgment," David replied. He kept his voice steady, professional. "You claim we violated galactic law by entering the Forbidden Zone, but we checked the treaties. We studied every agreement humanity signed when we first made contact with Council representatives. There is no mention of any Forbidden Zone around Proxima Centauri. No documentation. No warning in any official capacity. The zone exists by ancient law," said Counselor Vex, a serpentine creature whose body coiled around her platform. "It requires no documentation. All civilized species know of it." "But we are not a civilized species," David said. "Not by your definition. You have told us that repeatedly. You have refused our applications for council membership 18 times. You have declared us too primitive, too aggressive, too unpredictable to join galactic society. So how can you hold us to laws we were never officially told about?" The murmurs grew louder. David saw some counselors nodding slowly. Others looked furious. Drax raised one massive hand and silence fell again. "You play word games, human. This will not save you." "I play the only game available to me," David replied. "The game of law and precedent that you yourselves established. If humanity is too primitive for council membership, then we cannot be bound by council laws that were never formally presented to us. If we are civilized enough to be held accountable, then we are civilized enough to deserve membership and all the legal protections it provides. You seek to trap us with logic, Vex hissed. I seek clarity, David corrected. For 6 months, I have studied your laws, your history, your precedents. Do you know what I found? In the last 4,000 years, the Council has granted emergency membership to 27 species who were deemed too primitive by normal standards. Emergency membership was granted because those species faced existential threats and needed Council protection. Letting that sink in. Humanity now faces an existential threat. You have declared your intention to imprison us on our own world. By your own precedent, we qualify for emergency membership. And as members, we have the right to appeal any judgment before it is enacted. The chamber erupted. Counselors shouted in dozens of languages. Some demanded David's immediate removal. Others called for a review of the precedents he cited. A few laughed, appreciating the legal trap he had constructed. Drax stood, his massive form casting shadows across the entire chamber. The noise stopped. You are clever, human. More clever than we anticipated. His crystalline eyes studied David with new intensity. But you have made a dangerous assumption. You assume we will follow our own laws when it is inconvenient for us to do so. I assume nothing, David said. But I know that if the Council does not follow its own laws, then it has no moral authority to enforce them on others. Every species here will see that. Every civilization will remember that the Council broke its own rules because one primitive species outsmarted them. The silence that followed was different. Now, thoughtful, uncertain, you would risk everything on this gambit? Drax asked. We already risked everything the moment we entered that forbidden zone, David replied. We found something there, Supreme Counselor. Something that explains why the zone exists. Something that changes our understanding of the galaxy's history. Every being in the chamber leaned forward. What did you find? Drax's voice was sharp. David smiled. Grant us emergency membership. Allow our appeal, and I will tell you. Refuse, and what we discovered dies with us. When you activate your containment field, your choice, Supreme Counselor. Follow your laws, or lose knowledge that could reshape everything you think you know about this galaxy. Drax stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, the ancient being began to laugh. The sound was like boulders grinding together. You magnificent, arrogant creature. You come here alone, with no weapons, no army, and you hold the entire council hostage, with nothing but words and secrets. Axe's laughter faded. Very well. The council will grant humanity provisional emergency membership for a period of 30 days. In that time, you will present your appeal and reveal what you found in the Forbidden Zone. If your information proves valuable, we will consider full membership. If you have deceived us, the punishment will be far worse than mere isolation. David bowed slightly. Thank you, Supreme Counselor. I believe you will find our discovery very interesting indeed. As the chamber began to discuss procedures and schedules, David allowed himself a small moment of relief. He had bought humanity 30 days. 30 days to prove they deserved a place among the stars, or 30 days to prepare for what was coming. The real gamble was about to begin. The research station orbiting Proxima Centauri looked peaceful from the outside. Inside, Dr. Rebecca Torres stood in front of a holographic display that showed something impossible. Behind her, 3 council observers watched in silence. They had arrived 6 hours ago, demanding to see what humanity had discovered in the Forbidden Zone. Now they understood why their ancestors had sealed this place away. This cannot be real, whispered Observer Krath. A tall insectoid being with multiple compound eyes. The energy readings alone would require the output of 1,000 stars. It is real, Rebecca said. Her voice was tired. She had not slept in 3 days. We have run every test, every analysis. This structure has been here for at least 50,000 years, maybe longer, and it is still active. The hologram showed a massive ring floating in space, so large that Earth's moon could pass through its center with room to spare. The ring was made of a material that did not exist in any known periodic table. It pulsed with energy that seemed to come from nowhere, defying every law of physics the galaxy understood. "What is its purpose?" asked Observer Thane, a crystalline being similar to Drax but younger. "Only 800 years old." Rebecca touched a control, and the hologram changed. Now it showed the ring activating, energy building to impossible levels, and then releasing in a directed beam toward a distant star system. "We believe it is a weapon," she said quietly. "The most powerful weapon ever created. One activation could sterilize an entire star system, wipe out every planet, every moon, every living thing within 100 light-years." The third observer, a floating sphere of contained plasma named Ix, pulsed a deep red color that Rebecca had learned meant extreme concern. "And you activated this weapon?" "No," Rebecca said quickly. "We found it already charging. Whatever triggered it happened before we arrived. We have been trying to shut it down for the last 28 days. Krath's antennae twitched violently. 28 days? You have known about this for almost a month and you said nothing." "We told Ambassador Miller," Rebecca replied. "He was preparing to inform the council when you summoned him for the trial. We needed to understand what we were dealing with before causing a panic." "A panic?" Thane's voice rose. "This is beyond panic. If this weapon activates, it will be visible across half the galaxy. Every species will demand answers. Wars have started over less." Rebecca pulled up another display. This one showed calculations, energy projections, and a countdown timer. 72 hours remained. "We have 3 days before it fires," she said. "We have traced the targeting trajectory. The weapon is aimed at a star system in the outer reaches, a system that contains the homeworld of the Korath Empire." Silence filled the room. The Korath Empire was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. They controlled 300 star systems and had a fleet that could challenge the Council itself. If they believed someone was about to destroy their home world, they would strike first and ask questions never. "This is a disaster," Ike said, its plasma body flickering with agitation. "If the Korath learn of this, they will assume it is a Council weapon. They have been looking for an excuse to break away from galactic law for centuries. This will give them the justification they need." "That is why we kept it secret," Rebecca said. "But now that you are here, now that you know, we need the Council's help. We cannot stop this alone." Grath moved closer to the hologram, studying it with several of his eyes while the others watched the humans in the room. "How did you even find this place?" "The Forbidden Zone has been sealed for 8,000 years. Our sensors cannot penetrate the barrier. How did you—" Rebecca hesitated. This was the part that would make everything worse. "We did not find it by accident," she said slowly. "We were led here. Led by whom? By the structure itself." Rebecca pulled up a new display showing strange signals, mathematical patterns that repeated in specific sequences. 6 months ago, Earth started receiving transmissions. At first, we thought they were natural phenomena, but the patterns were too precise. They were coordinates, instructions, an invitation. Thane's crystals darkened. "The weapon is sentient? We do not know. But something wanted us to find it. Something wanted humanity specifically." Rebecca looked at each observer in turn. "And before you ask, no, we do not know why. We do not know who built it. We do not know why it was aimed at the Korath homeworld. All we know is that we have 72 hours to stop it or watch billions die." Krath turned away from the hologram, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "I must report this to Supreme Counselor Drax immediately. He will need to convene an emergency session." Rebecca said, "There is more. More. What could possibly be worse than this?" Rebecca pulled up one final display. This one showed the ring from a different angle, revealing something the observers had not noticed before. Behind the massive weapon, barely visible against the darkness of space, were more rings. Dozens of them. All identical. All charging. "This is not the only one," Rebecca said. "We found 43 more scattered throughout the Forbidden Zone. All of them are activating. All of them are targeting different systems. We mapped the trajectories. In 72 hours, every major military power in the galaxy will be under attack simultaneously. The observers stared at the display in horror. Someone is trying to start a war, Ix said quietly. A war that will consume the entire galaxy, as Rebecca agreed. And they arranged for humanity to discover it first. So when the weapons fire, everyone will blame us. Thane moved toward the exit. I must inform the Supreme Counselor. This is beyond our authority, Rebecca said. But tell Drax one more thing. Tell him that we found something else in the data we recovered from the ring. A message. It is in a language that should not exist, written by a civilization that all records say died out 20,000 years ago. What does it say? Krath asked. Rebecca's expression was grim. It says, they think humanity is weak. Let them learn otherwise. The silence will be extinction. The observers left in a rush, their emergency transport departing the station within minutes. Rebecca watched them go, then turned to her assistant, a young man named Peter Grant. Do they suspect? Peter asked. No, Rebecca said. They believe every word. The council will panic. They will mobilize their fleets. And when those fleets arrive at the Forbidden Zone, the real plan begins. Peter looked at the hologram of the massive ring weapon. Are you sure this will work? If we miscalculate, we are not just risking humanity. We are risking everything. I know, Rebecca said, but we have run out of options. The galaxy has kept us weak for too long. They have denied us membership, denied us respect, denied us the right to grow beyond our solar system. They think we are primitive and harmless. She touched a control, and the hologram shifted, showing Earth's moon. Beneath its surface, barely visible in the scan, were structures similar to the rings, weapons that humanity had been building in secret for 30 years. When the Council realizes the truth, Rebecca continued, when they understand that we built those rings, that we have been preparing for this moment since they first contacted us, it will be too late. They will have no choice but to accept us as equals, or face extinction. Peter swallowed hard. And if they choose to fight? Rebecca smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then we show them why every intelligent species in human history learned the same lesson. Never underestimate the desperate, never corner the weak, and never, ever assume silence means surrender. The countdown timer continued. 71 hours remained. Supreme Counselor Drax convened the emergency session in the secure chamber, a room used only for the most critical threats to galactic security. Unlike the Grand Public Chamber where David Miller had stood days before, this room was small, dark, and filled with only the most powerful members of the Council. 20 species represented here controlled 90% of the galaxy's military power. David stood in the center again, but this time he was not alone. Rebecca Torres stood beside him, her holographic displays floating in the air around them, showing the ring weapons and their countdown timers. You claim you are victims, said General Vorak of the Koreth Empire, his massive armored form radiating barely contained fury. You claim someone is framing humanity for an attack on my homeworld, yet you discovered these weapons? You have been studying them for a month. How convenient that you are the only ones who can access them? Or not the only ones who can access them, Rebecca replied calmly. We shared all access codes with the Council observers. You can send your own teams to verify everything we have shown you. We have, said Counselor Vex, her serpentine body coiled tightly. Our engineers confirm the weapons are real, the countdown is real, and the targeting is accurate. What they cannot confirm is your innocence. The technology used to build these rings is human in origin. We found Earth-specific materials in the construction, isotopes that exist nowhere else in the galaxy. David felt his stomach drop. That was not supposed to be possible. The plan had accounted for every detail, every trace. How had the Council found evidence so quickly? Impossible, he said. We do not have technology capable of building something like this. We are still learning basic hyperspace travel. Those rings would require knowledge we do not possess. Perhaps you do not possess it now, Drax said quietly. What if you possessed it in the past? What if humanity is not as young as you claim? The chamber fell silent. David's mind raced. Drax was suggesting something impossible, something that would change everything. Explain, David demanded. Drax gestured, and a new hologram appeared. This one showed archaeological data from Earth, dating back hundreds of thousands of years. Buried deep in rock formations, in places no human had ever excavated, were traces of advanced technology. Quantum processors, fusion core, materials that match the composition of the ring weapons. We did not find these, Drax said. Your own scientists discovered them 60 years ago and classified the information. We only learned of it when we hacked your military databases after the observers reported their findings. David stared at the data. It was real. The dates matched. The locations matched. Humanity had found evidence of advanced civilization on Earth long before they reached the stars, and the government had hidden it from everyone. You were saying humans built those weapons thousands of years ago? Rebecca asked. That is insane. We have no record of any ancient advanced civilization on Earth. Records can be erased, Vex said. Memories can be lost. But physical evidence remains. She pulled up more data, showing genetic analysis. We also found something interesting in human DNA, markers that should not exist. Modifications that suggest artificial manipulation on a massive scale. Someone altered your species long ago, gave you enhanced cognitive abilities, increased aggression, faster adaptation. You are not a natural species. You are a weapon that forgot what it was designed to do. David looked at Rebecca and saw his own horror reflected in her eyes. If this was true, if humanity had been created as a weapon by some ancient civilization, then everything they believed about themselves was a lie. Even if this is true, David said slowly, it does not mean we've built those rings now. It does not mean we are responsible for what is about to happen. No, agreed General Vorak. But it means you cannot be trusted. A weapon does not choose its targets. It fires when triggered. And something has triggered humanity. Drax stood, his ancient form seeming to grow larger in the dim light. The Council has reached a decision. We cannot risk allowing the ring weapons to fire. We will destroy them. You cannot, Rebecca said urgently. Our analysis shows that destroying one ring will trigger all the others. The weapons are linked. If you attack them, you will start the exact war someone wants. Then what do you propose? Drax asked. Give us time to disarm them properly. We can do it, but we need access to all 43 rings simultaneously. We need your help to coordinate the shutdown sequence. Or, Vex suggested coldly, you need us to drop our guard while you position forces around each weapon. This could be an elaborate trap. David made a decision. A dangerous one, but perhaps the only one that could save both humanity and the galaxy. You want proof we are not behind this? He said. Fine, Rebecca. Show them Project Midnight. Rebecca's eyes went wide. David, no? That is classified beyond anything we have shared before. Show them, David repeated. Rebecca hesitated, then pulled up a new set of files. These showed Earth's moon again, but now the hidden structures beneath its surface were visible in full detail. Massive weapons platforms. Shield generators powerful enough to protect the entire solar system. Ships built with technology that matched and exceeded anything the Council possessed. The room erupted in shouts and accusations. You've been preparing for war. Vorak roared. You built an arsenal in secret while pretending to be weak and primitive. We built defenses, David corrected loudly. After the Council rejected us 18 times, after you made it clear we would never be allowed to join as equals, we prepared to protect ourselves. We learned from galactic history. Every species that remained weak was eventually conquered or destroyed. We refused to be victims. This is treason, Vex hissed. You violated dozens of treaties, built weapons of mass destruction while claiming to be peaceful. We did what we had to do to survive, David said. And now I am offering you a choice. Help us stop those ring weapons, and we will dismantle our defenses. Accept humanity as full Council members with all rights and protections, and we will share our technology. Work with us instead of against us. And if we refuse, Drax asked. Then we handled this alone. We shut down the rings ourselves and we keep our weapons. We remain outside the council and we prepare for the day you decide we are too dangerous to exist." David's voice hardened. "But I promise you, if that day comes, if you come for Earth, intending to wipe us out, you will discover that we are far more dangerous than you imagine." Drax studied David for a long moment. The ancient being's crystallized revealed nothing. "You are either the bravest human I have ever met," Drax said finally, "or the most foolish. Perhaps both. Very well. The Council will work with you to disarm the ring weapons. In exchange, humanity will submit to full inspection of all your defensive installations. If we find evidence that you plan to use those weapons aggressively, we will dismantle them by force. If you truly seek only to defend yourselves, we will negotiate terms for membership." "Agreed," David said.
Ow.
"But know this," Drax continued. "If those rings fire, if even one planet is destroyed, humanity will be held responsible. Emergency membership will be revoked, and the full might of the Council will descend on Earth. There will be no negotiation, no mercy. Extinction." David nodded. "Understood." As the meeting ended and the council members departed to organize the emergency response, Rebecca pulled David aside. "You just gambled everything," she whispered. "If this goes wrong, if someone triggers those rings anyway, we are finished." "I know," David replied. "But we were always going to be finished if we kept hiding. At least now we have a chance." 67 hours remained on the countdown. The operation to disarm 43 ring weapons simultaneously required coordination on a scale the galaxy had never attempted. Ships from 200 different species converged on the Forbidden Zone, each one carrying teams of engineers, weapons specialists, and soldiers. The Council had mobilized 10% of its entire fleet for this mission. David watched from the command center aboard the Council flagship Eternal Resolve. Holographic displays showed every ring weapon, every approaching ship, and the steadily counting timer. 53 hours remained. "All teams are in position," reported Admiral Kalen, a four-armed being who commanded the Council's rapid response fleet. "We are ready to begin disarmament on your signal." David looked at Rebecca, who was reviewing the shutdown sequence one final time. She had spent the last 48 hours working with Council engineers to develop a procedure that would safely deactivate the weapons. One mistake, and they could trigger the very catastrophe they were trying to prevent. "Begin," David ordered. Throughout the Forbidden Zone, 200 ships moved into position around the ring weapons. Engineering teams deployed specialized equipment designed to interface with the ancient technology. The shutdown sequence required precise timing. All 43 rings had to be deactivated within a 12-second window, where the linked systems would detect the interference and automatically fire. David watched the countdown. 45 hours. 44. The teams worked steadily, carefully, cutting through layers of security that had protected the weapons for 50,000 years. Then, alarms blared across every system. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected," Admiral Kalen announced. "Unidentified ships entering the Forbidden Zone. Over 300 contacts." The display's new red markers appeared. Ships were arriving from every direction, and they were not broadcasting Council identification codes. "Who are they?" David demanded. "Running analysis now," Kalen replied. Then his expression darkened. "They are broadcasting Korath military codes. But the ships do not match any known Korath designs. These vessels are something else." General Vorak's communication channel opened urgently. "Those are not my ships. I have accounted for every vessel in the Korath fleet. These are imposters." The unidentified ships opened fire without warning. Missiles streaked toward the Council vessels surrounding the ring weapons. Shields flared as the first impacts hit. "Return fire," Kalen ordered. "All ships, defensive pattern Delta. Protect the engineering teams." The space around the Forbidden Zone erupted into chaos. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Ships maneuvered frantically, trying to defend themselves while still maintaining position near the rings. The engineering teams continued working, racing against time as battle raged around them. David grabbed the tactical display, zooming in on one of the attacking ships. Something was wrong. The vessel's energy signature was familiar but distorted, as if someone had tried to disguise it. "Rebecca," he called out. "Look at this." Rebecca ran over, studying the readings. Her face went pale. "That is human technology. Modified and enhanced, but definitely based on our designs." "Impossible," David said. "All our ships are accounted for. We have 17 vessels total, and they are all at Earth." "Not all of them," Rebecca said slowly. Project Midnight included 12 prototype attack ships. They were built 10 years ago as part of the Defense Initiative. We mothballed them after the Council made contact, deemed them too provocative. They have been in storage on the dark side of the moon. Are they still there? Rebecca pulled up inventory records, her fingers flying across the controls. Then she stopped, her expression turning to horror. "No, they were moved 3 months ago." Authorization code from Director Wells. Director Gregory Wells was the head of Earth's Defense Initiative, the civilian oversight committee that controlled all military projects. He had been one of the strongest advocates for hiding humanity's true capabilities from the Council. "Wells betrayed us," David said. "He is the one who built the ring weapons. He planted the evidence in our archaeological records. He created this entire crisis to force a confrontation with the Council. But why?" Rebecca asked. "What does he gain from starting a galactic war?" David pulled up communications records, tracing back every message Wells had sent over the last 6 months. The pattern became clear. Wells had been in contact with separatist groups across the galaxy, species who wanted to break away from Council control. He had promised them weapons, technology, power, if they would help him destroy the Council's authority. "He is not trying to start a war," David said. "He is trying to start a revolution. He wants to tear down the Council and replace it with something new. Something where humanity has real power instead of begging for acceptance." Another alarm sounded. The countdown to the ring weapons firing had jumped forward. "What happened?" Kalen demanded. "Someone activated an override protocol," one of the engineers reported. "The weapons are charging faster. We now have 12 hours instead of 40. David felt everything falling apart. Wells had planned this perfectly. The battle, the confusion, the shortened timeline. There was no way they could disarm 43 weapons in 12 hours while under attack. "We need to fall back," Kalen said. "Evacuate the engineering teams before those weapons fire," David said. "If we retreat, Wells wins. The weapons fire, planets are destroyed, and the galaxy tears itself apart. We have to stop him." "How?" Kalen demanded. "We cannot fight and disarm simultaneously." David looked at the tactical display, at the 12 prototype ships causing chaos throughout the Forbidden Zone. An idea formed. "Dangerous and desperate? Rebecca, can those prototype ships be remotely accessed?" "Maybe," she said. "They were designed with emergency override systems in case of malfunction. But Wells would have disabled those." "Not disabled," David said. "Just encrypted. And I know someone who has the master codes." He opened a communication channel to Earth, bypassing normal protocols to reach the Defense Initiative headquarters directly. A face appeared on the screen. Older, tired, but still sharp. "Director Wells," Ambassador Miller Wells said calmly. "I wondered when you would figure it out." "Call off your ships," David demanded. "End this before it is too late." "Too late?" Wells laughed. "It has been too late since the Council first rejected us. They have kept humanity weak and subservient for decades. I am simply correcting that mistake. By killing billions of innocents? By destroying the very civilization we are trying to join? By proving we do not need them," Wells replied. "When those weapons fire, when the Council's greatest military powers are crippled, humanity will be the strongest force in the galaxy. We will dictate terms. We will never be denied again." "You are insane," David said. "I am realistic," Wells corrected. "You think they will ever accept us as equals? You think playing by their rules will earn their respect? No. Respect comes from strength. Fear comes from power. And I have given humanity both." David made a decision. "Computer authorization code Miller Zeroso and Delta." Transfer all command authority to Ambassador David Miller. Verify with retinal scan and genetic markers. The system beeped. Wells' expression changed from confidence to confusion. "What are you doing?" Wells demanded. "Something I should have done years ago," David replied. "Override code recognized. Transferring control of all Defense Initiative assets to Council oversight. Authorization from President Reyes received and confirmed." On the display, Wells' face twisted with rage. "You traitor. You are giving them everything. Our weapons, our technology, our future." "No," David said. "I am giving us a chance. A real chance. Not based on lies and manipulation, but on trust." He transmitted the override codes to Rebecca, who immediately began accessing the 12 prototype ships. One by one, their weapon systems shut down. Their engines died. They drifted helplessly in space as Council ships surrounded them. "All hostile vessels neutralized," Kalen reported. Engineering teams resuming disarmament procedures. But the countdown continued. 10 hours remained. "Wells has one more trick," Rebecca said urgently. "He built a failsafe into the ring weapons. Even if we disarm them, he can trigger them remotely. And the signal is coming from Earth." David understood. Wells had always planned to have the final word. "Can we stop it?" he asked. "Only one way," Rebecca said grimly. "We have to destroy the transmitter. But it is buried under Defense Initiative headquarters. Right in the heart of Geneva." David contacted President Reyes directly. The conversation was brief and painful. Within an hour, the building was evacuated. 10 minutes later, Council ships in orbit launched precision strikes that vaporized the entire facility. The countdown stopped with 4 hours remaining across the Forbidden Zone. Engineering teams successfully disarmed all 43 ring weapons. The crisis was over. David stood in the command center, watching the displays show green status lights across every system. They had won, but the cost had been high. "What happens now?" Rebecca asked quietly. "Now we face the consequences," David replied. 3 days after the crisis ended, David Miller stood before the Galactic Council again. This time, the Great Chamber was packed with representatives not just from the 400-member species, but from thousands of smaller civilizations who had come to witness what everyone was calling the trial of humanity. The charges were serious: conspiracy, weapons development in violation of treaties, attempted genocide. And underlying it all, the question that terrified every species in the galaxy: could humanity be trusted? Supreme Counselor Drax sat on his throne, his ancient eyes studying David with an expression that revealed nothing. The chamber was silent, waiting for judgment. Ambassador Miller, Drax said finally, "You have admitted to building weapons in secret. You have admitted to violating treaties. You have admitted that members of your government attempted to destroy multiple worlds and collapse galactic civilization. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" David took a breath. He had prepared a speech, carefully crafted arguments about survival and desperation, and the impossible position humanity had been placed in. But standing here now, facing the judgment of 400 species, he abandoned the script. "No," he said simply. "We have no defense. What we did was wrong. What Director Wells attempted was evil. We deserve whatever punishment you decide." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Counselors looked at each other in surprise. They had expected David to argue, to fight for humanity's survival. But David continued, "I want you to understand why we did it. Not as an excuse. Just so you know the truth before you decide our fate." Drax gestured for him to continue. "Humanity reached the stars 60 years ago," David said. "We were young, excited, hopeful. We discovered we were not alone, that the galaxy was full of life and civilization. We tried to join you. We followed every rule, every requirement, every suggestion. And 18 times, you rejected us. You called us primitive, aggressive, unpredictable. You told us to stay in our solar system and wait until we grew up." He paused, looking around the chamber. "So we waited. We developed new technologies. We built better ships. We studied galactic culture and law. And every time we applied for membership, you found new reasons to say no. We were too warlike, too individualistic, too different from the civilizations you understood. After 40 years of rejection, some humans started to believe we would never be accepted, that the council wanted us to remain weak so we would never threaten the established order. That is not true, Counselor, Vex protested. The membership requirements are the same for all species. Maybe David agreed. But the interpretation of those requirements seemed to change every time humanity got close to meeting them. Director Wells and others like him concluded that the council would never willingly accept us as equals. So they decided to force the issue. They built weapons to defend Earth if you came for us. They created leverage so you would have to negotiate instead of dictate. And the ring weapons? General Vorak demanded. The attempted mass murder? Wells' plan, not humanity's, David said. He went rogue, built those weapons without government approval, used stolen technology and falsified records. When we discovered what he was doing, we stopped him. We chose to work with the council instead of against it, even though it meant exposing all our secrets and risking extinction. He met Drax's ancient gaze directly. You asked if humanity can be trusted. The honest answer is sometimes. We are not a unified species. We have factions, disagreements, individuals who believe different things. Some humans want peace and cooperation. Others want power and dominance. Just like every other species in this galaxy, the question is not whether you can trust all humans all the time. The question is whether you will give us the chance to prove we are worth trusting more often than not. The chamber fell silent. David waited for judgment. Drax stood slowly, his massive form casting shadows across the entire space. The council has deliberated. We have reviewed all evidence. We have consulted with our legal experts and military advisors. We have debated for 3 days without pause. And we have reached our decision. David braced himself. Humanity is guilty of the charges brought against it. There is no question of that. The weapons you built, the treaties you violated, the deception you practiced, all of it breaks galactic law. Around the chamber, alien faces showed satisfaction. They had been right about humans all along. The primitives could not be trusted. However, Drax continued, and the chamber quieted again. The council acknowledges that humanity was placed in an impossible position. We rejected your membership applications while still holding you to member standards. We demanded you remain weak while criticizing you for not advancing fast enough. We expected you to trust us while giving you no reason to believe we would ever accept you. He paused, letting that admission sink in. The council shares responsibility for what happened. Our policies toward humanity were contradictory and unfair. We allowed fear to guide our decisions instead of reason. And in doing so, we pushed you toward exactly the kind of behavior we claimed to fear. Drax raised one massive hand. Therefore, the council issues the following judgment. Humanity's emergency membership is made permanent. You are accepted as full members of the Galactic Council, with all rights and protections. However, you will serve a probationary period of 50 years, during which your military capabilities will be monitored and restricted. You will dismantle all weapons platforms that exceed defensive needs. You will submit to regular inspections. And you will prove through actions, not words, that you deserve the trust we are now placing in you. David felt his knees weaken with relief. Furthermore, Drax said, the council acknowledges that humanity demonstrated courage and integrity during the crisis. You chose cooperation over conflict when conflict would have been easier. You sacrificed your own people to stop Director Wells. You earned this membership, not despite your flaws, but by showing you can overcome them when it matters most. The Supreme Counselor sat back down. Welcome to the Galactic Council, humanity. We have much to learn from each other. The chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some species applauded. Others protested. But the decision was made. Humanity had its place among the stars. Later, as David prepared to return to Earth, Rebecca found him in his quarters. We did it, she said, still sounding disbelieving. We actually did it. We survived, David corrected. Now comes the hard part. Living up to the promises I made? About that, Rebecca pulled up a data file. The teams analyzing the ring weapons found something interesting. The technology is not as old as Wells claimed. It is only about 200 years old, and the signature matches perfectly with a species called the Vorath. Who are they? They were. Past tense. The Vorath were a major power 300 years ago. They challenged the Council's authority, tried to establish their own empire. The Council destroyed them, wiped out their entire civilization. Officially, it was justified under galactic law, but the records are sealed. David felt a chill. You were saying the ring weapons were Vorath? That they were preparing to attack the Council? Maybe. Or maybe they were preparing to defend themselves, and the Council struck first. Rebecca's expression was grim. Either way, their technology ended up on Earth, hidden under our moon, modified to look human. Someone wanted us to find it. Someone wanted us to follow the same path the Vorath did. A test, David said slowly, to see if we would make the same mistakes, or a trap. To justify doing to us what they did to the Vorath. Rebecca closed the file. We passed, barely, but the question remains. What happens to the next species that threatens the Council's power? Will they get the same mercy we did? Or will the galaxy decide it is easier to eliminate threats than to understand them? David had no answer. He looked out at the stars, at the vast civilization humanity had just joined, and wondered what other secrets were hidden in the galaxy's past. What other tests waited for species who grew too powerful, too quickly? They had survived. They had earned their place. But the silence that had protected humanity for so long was gone now. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting to see what humans would do next. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, others were watching too. Species that had failed their tests. Civilizations that had been erased from history. All of them wondering the same thing, when humanity inevitably threatened the balance of power again. Would the Council remember the mercy they showed today? Or would they remember the Vorath and choose extinction over integration? The silence was over. What came next would define not just humanity's future, but the future of every species that ever dared to reach beyond their place in the cosmic order. David Miller turned from the window and began preparing. His report to Earth. They had won their freedom. Now they had to prove they deserved it. The galaxy was watching. History was watching. And somewhere in the sealed archives, records of the Vorath waited to remind everyone what happened to species who failed the test. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, humanity celebrated. They had faced the judgment of 400 civilizations and survived. They had proven that silence did not mean weakness, that patience was not surrender, and that the greatest threat to any established order was not violence, but the refusal to give up when every reasonable species would have quit. They declared war thinking humanity was weak. The galaxy realized the silence was not extinction, it was preparation. And now, finally, the real story could begin. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.